Shabbat Shalom. Our Parsha this week is Tetze. It means when you go out, when you go forth. And one of the major discussions that Moses is having with the people of Israel, this is his last speeches to the people of Israel, his last words before he passes on and they cross the river and begin their new life as a nation, is he talks about war. What happens when you go to war? Now, the reason this is important because Moses is a very realistic leader. He understands that there will be war. The Torah understands it. You know, some religious documents, they want to be very messianic, right? Let's talk about when there will never be war again. And by the way, there are references to when there will never be war again. But those references are in the distant future. In other words, after history is over. They're not anticipated now. That's the goal. But it's a goal that is not realistic with human beings as they are now. Moses knows that. So he doesn't say, if you go to war. It's when you go to war. It's going to happen. This is human nature. This is, if you're going to have a nation, there's going to be periods of time when you're going to engage in war. Because there's going to be somebody who either wants your land, or somebody who wants that which you have, your possessions, somebody wants to expand. It's going to happen. There are conflicts. But there have to be rules about it. So the Torah talks about certain rules when you conduct a war. But what's fascinating is his realism. Because he's correct. If you are messianic, and you believe there shouldn't ever be war, so you become a pacifist. After all, if you're a pacifist, you won't engage in war. It presents a terrible danger. Why? Because it allows evil to thrive over good. And it's the opposite. When you become a zealot, and you believe that war is the solution, right? It's just the opposite of pacifism. War becomes a solution. And you believe in perfection. You believe that you can bring the Messianic era now, then you have the opposite danger. You had the Nazis who thought that the Aryan race was perfection. They would perfect the world, right? They would eliminate everybody who wasn't an Aryan. And they brought about over 70 million deaths, a disaster to the world. Communism, it was perfection. It was Messianic. The world will be perfect. Everybody will be equal. Everybody will have the same material goods. Well, that didn't play out too well either. Communism was a complete disaster. It went against human nature. And how many deaths did Stalin bring to the world? Another mass murderer. These type of messianic movements, they always end up with a lot of people dead. It's a simple fact of life. Because it doesn't work. Those isms, that messianism in this period of time, in our real world, is dangerous. Pacifism, of course, is the flip side, as we just mentioned. Because while Hitler was trying to create a messianic perfection with his Aryan race, you had Neville Chamberlain, who was basically pacifist. We'll figure it out. We won't fight. We'll get along. Peace in our time. And of course, he gave Hitler the amount of time he needed to perfect his war machine and bring about death and destruction. So they're both dangerous, they're both evil. Those who want to bring about the Messianic era through war, mass murder. Those who want to bring about the Messianic era through pacifism allow evil to thrive, and they allow good people to be slaughtered. This is what Moses is trying to tell them. You will have to go to war, prepare for war, but only a defensive war, not an offensive war, very important. And when you conduct that war, you have to conduct it with some type of humanity. You can't just let havoc, you can't wreak havoc. You have to have some rules. And they actually establish rules about how one conducts war, including the very important rule that you have to offer the enemy who is engaged in war against you the opportunity to surrender, to sign the peace treaty, to put an end to it, to make an agreement. You always have to make that available to them as a possibility. So the Torah is very realistic. In our own time, I remember back during the period of the election, there was somebody who was interested in running for office who said, why are we worried about Iran having nuclear weapons? What's that our concern? Well, obviously this person doesn't live in the real world. It's our concern because Iran has expressed explicitly the idea of destroying Israel, specifically, and conquering basically that whole part of the world. And that's what else would they want nuclear weapons for? Nobody's attacking them. So, someone who says, what are we worried about? Is someone who has this messianic era that people are going to be peaceful. It's only for defensive purposes. That's a great danger, to think that we shouldn't worry about Iran or evil dictators having those type of weapons. So the Torah says, be realistic. you'll have to go to war. Don't let that war turn you into monsters. Try and prevent the war. But when necessary, you will fight. And you can't be a pacifist. You can't stand by while your neighbor is suffering, while your neighbor is being attacked unjustly. You have to, at times, intervene. And if you are attacked, it is a mitzvah of the highest order to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your communities, protect your country. So Moses says, when the time comes to go to war, you have to know how to conduct yourself, and you cannot hesitate if it means protecting your country, protecting your life, protecting your family. This is the realism of Moses' message. I think that's why, to a certain degree, Judaism survived all these years, because it's a realistic message. How to live in this world, but how to live as mensch, how to live as good human beings, even in the most difficult moments, such as war. That's why Moses was, in fact, the greatest prophet, the greatest teacher, why we call him Moses, our teacher. This is part of the message he delivered to the people of Israel before he said farewell. A message that is very important to us, even to this day, thousands of years later. Shabbat Shalom.